Every person has a journey, a reason for being who they are. Have you ever looked at someone and wondered, who really is this person? How did they get here? What's their story? Well, that's why this podcast was created, to listen to other people's life stories. Welcome to the My Story podcast. I'm your host, Ari. Guys, welcome back to another episode of the My Story podcast. Like every YouTuber has to say, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. Today I'm very excited because we have another story, of course, but I'm actually also kind of nervous because today I have someone that I have heard here and there a couple of stories, but I was like, okay, no, I really need to listen to the whole story. So without further ado, I present Chris Conroy.
How you doing? I'm so excited to do this. When you asked me, I was like, woo, couldn't wait.
Yes, because as I just mentioned, you always mentioned here and there a couple of things of your story and at work. And I was like, I really want to listen to the whole thing. And what better to do it than the podcast? So I'm so glad you said yes. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm a big fan of your podcast, too.
Thank you. That means a lot.
My two favorites are Dr. Buck and Wesley, of course. So,
of course.
Yeah.
They're two good, very good episodes. If you haven't watched it, go watch them. Yeah. So let's begin from the top.
Okay.
Your name and maybe a story from your last name.
All right. So my name is Chris Conroy. I am from a small beach town in Florida called Fort Walton Beach, right next to Destin. Yeah. I'm from a media family. We don't know anything else, the whole bunch of us. And I grew up a happy childhood, playing on the beach, but mostly playing in a television station.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you grew up always on media. That's what I've heard, right?
Yeah, from diapers. I mean, I didn't know anything else.
How did your family always been on media, or did someone like drift away from something else, or has it always been media?
So my father started work in 1962 at Channel 12 in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
And he started in programming and master control as an overnight job because he went to college late. So he had my brother at home. I wasn't born yet.
Okay.
And my mom was teaching drama. And so he got the bug because in our business, you start working and it bites you and it never unbites you. Mm-hmm. Even the people who get out of the business, they still are bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so he excelled. He did well. A long history starts right there. And then he wound up moving to the Panhandle of Florida because in 1971 actually, you could barely get an over-the-air signal in Fort Walton Beach, Florida.
Oh.
So a friend of his was in the cable industry. And he went to the county commission in Okaloosa County and said, I'll give you 5 channels and I'll string this thing called cable all over town. And then, give me the franchise. And they said, that's good, but you have to do something for us. You're going to put in a 6th channel. So Channel 6 was born.
Oh.
Right. So my dad, an old broadcaster, even though he was in cable, he was a broadcaster.
Okay.
All the way. He ran that thing like it had an antenna, believe me. But they had to do local news, local weather, local sports, high school sports, raise money for charities, the whole routine. So my dad was hired to come and start and run Channel 6 in Fort Walton.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how the family got into it.
Okay.
I was less than a year old.
Wow. So you already said since diapers you started, what was your first job then in the media?
Well, at first, my parents did not want to pay for childcare.
Okay. Okay.
So they took me to work. And my brother, too. And we were terrors, I'll tell you that. Running the halls and throwing stuff off people's desks. It was so much fun. I remember those days.
I can imagine that could be very fun for a kid.
Yeah. I mean, when let's say 4th grade.
Okay.
My dad would run and pick me up from school in his Channel 6 truck. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then he would take me to work with him.
Okay.
Until my mom was done anchoring the 6 o'clock news. And then they'd take me home.
So your mom was an anchor as well?
My mom, I gotta believe, is one of the earliest female news directors in the state of Florida.
Wow.
I can't imagine there were a lot of them in 1971.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was a theater major and had to teach herself journalism. But my mom was so wicked smart. Man, she figured it out. And
that's very interesting.
And anchored news and did news for 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so anyway, I said, everybody asked me, how'd you get in the business? I don't recommend getting in the business the way I did, you know? So, and then my dad, he had to work on Sunday mornings because they had a really small staff. And he had to play back these church services that were sponsors and stuff like that.
Okay.
So he'd bring me, we'd go to eat McDonald's breakfast, and then we would go to the station. And he would, he hits a button for an hour and First Baptist Church would play. He would turn on all the lights, all the cameras, the switcher, and everything, and say, entertain yourself, kid. So like 7 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old. I'm learning how to switch between cameras, and I'm just using my imagination and coming up with stuff and making shows of my very own, the whole thing. So that, and so my dad spent a lot of time with me that way.
Wow.
I mean, how can I do anything else now, right?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, sorry. But to me, it's like how much trust he put in you as a 7-year-old to like, because I've seen a lot of directors and people to even like teenagers. No, don't touch this, don't touch that.
Right.
And for him
I knew
to be
I knew what not to touch.
Okay, but still,
Right.
It's a lot of money invested in equipment, and still like, hey, just entertain yourself, learn by yourself. It's still a lot of trust.
Right. It was.
Yeah.
And so my brother was the same way.
Okay.
So my
what age difference? I'm sorry.
he's almost 6 years older than me.
Okay.
Right.
So he was close to a teenager when you were 7.
Right. So he wasn't interested in all this, although he had a lot of the same things offered to him too. We both understood a switcher, a camera, an audio board, and everything else. I'll tell you a funny story. I like to tell this story.
Okay.
And this is an example kind of story.
Okay.
So on any Christmas vacation, my dad would hire, they did one newscast a day. He would hire like high school kids or get friends in the other parts of the station to run camera. He'd give everybody the time off. So my dad would direct. My brother would be on camera 1, and I'm on a chair on camera 2. And my mom was anchoring. And my dad's dear friend, Dick Niebuhr, who is, he's still around. Him and his wife are having their 70th anniversary this month. And I'm still close with the guy, was doing weather because he was a weather guy in the Air Force. And my mom would, finish reading a segment and throw it to break and look over. My brother is like making funny faces at me. And I'm making funny faces back. And my mom would start screaming at us, I told you to, this is a place of business. And my brother would pull his muffs off and go, if it's a place of business, you should be paying us. And she'd say, well, do you like the ceiling over your head? Do you like the food? And my dad would say to me, he'd go, Chris, Moose, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Moose, is your brother not wearing his headphones? Like, yeah. He's like, tell him to put on the headphones. He put on the headphones, and my dad would start yelling at my brother, and my mom's yelling, and then all of a sudden we're back in 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're back into the newscast. That's the kind of thing that would happen. And those times made my brother and I, and we still are really close. We also, even though he's older, look exactly alike.
Really?
Yeah, we do look exactly alike.
Oh, that's fun. That's interesting.
When he got married, I was his best man.
Aww.
And people kept congratulating me.
Okay, wow. That is very big similarity then.
Right, and I kept saying, but it's no. And he goes, just say that we're very happy, okay?
Okay, that's
right,
funny.
so there's my childhood,
Wow, that's interesting. So you mentioned something about moose. Can you explain that for those who don't know why you said moose?
You've gotten to know me too well, Ari.
Sorry.
So there are people that will see this podcast and they'll be doing this.
Yeah, probably.
In my hometown, I mean, my childhood best friend from 6th grade is still my best friend. All right, we're tight.
Wow.
He's the only one that didn't call me Moose because everybody else called me Moose. But I was born at almost 10 pounds to a 5'4" Irish woman, breech. And when they picked me up in the nursery, I was this gigantic baby. And my grandma goes, he's as big as a moose. And it stuck. And there are teachers who had to look up what my first name was.
Wow.
As I was Moose, still am. There's
so
lots of
even
people.
your parents were like, Moose.
Oh, yeah. I was never Chris. Oh, unless I was in trouble.
Then that's how you knew you were in trouble.
Right, exactly. So.
It kind of happens to me. Like, I'm always like Ari or Ariane. But then if my mom says my full, that's long name, I'm like, oop. Okay.
Okay. All right. She means business.
She means business.
And I met Wanda. I know. She could probably mean business.
Yeah. You met my mom. That's true.
Yeah.
So that was funny. Okay. So more into that. So when did you ever, you never pursued college because you're already born into the industry. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I did pursue college.
Okay.
Right. So I got my first full paid, instead of volunteering for my dad.
Okay.
He wanted me to go to work for him. Like
Okay.
paid. And my dad and I he's my hero. And I loved this man. And I knew it as a teenager even. Like, not even that rebellious I just knew what kind of man he was. And I said, I love you too much. I can't work for you. And he didn't like that. So he went out to the competition, the broadcast station in town, and got me a job as a commercial producer.
Wow.
And I started May 14th, 1987. I'm 17 years old, right before high school graduation.
Wow.
I then went to what is now Northwest Florida State to work on gen studies, and then went to Pensacola State to start studying in music education.
Okay, so you studied music.
Right. I was a music education major, and no declared minor, and I was about maybe 3.5 semesters out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And but the whole time I was working in television full time, the whole way.
Okay, so you're pursuing two passions at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And two things happened. Life happened, and I put it on pause.
Okay.
Okay. And I also, in that regard, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. That never bothers me if I do. I realized in, starting to student teach and that kind of thing, that eighth graders smell bad and they don't know who they are.
Okay.
And you come out of, University of West Florida or University of South Alabama, one of those two where I was going to go, as a music ed major with a degree in music education, and you're going to go be a middle school assistant band director. And I wasn't interested in that.
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah. And the thing is I had to sit and think, what is my passion?
Okay.
And television was it. Television will always come first. Media now, because I call it media, not television, always comes first. Always has.
If I may ask, when did this passion for music come in throughout your childhood growing up in the media industry?
My brother,
Okay.
the one I'm tight with,
Yeah.
very good trombonist.
Oh, wow.
Now, my parents were not musically inclined.
Okay.
And God rest my mom, she would tell you she couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. But my brother really took to it. Well, I wanted to be like him. So like in 4th, 5th grade, I started playing his horn. And by 7th grade, I was all the way into the marching band and everything else. And so I really took to it. And then in 8th grade, I taught myself bass guitar.
Oh,
And
wow.
the rest was history. I was back in the hair metal days. I was in bands and having a good old time. Poison, the whole thing. Ripped jeans, the whole 9 yards. There's a picture of me in high school with my mom. And I've got on these gray stonewash Cavaricci jeans from the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And this flannel shirt from this old store. I don't even know if they got them anywhere, called the Merry-Go-Round. Everybody my age is like, oh, that was in the mall. I saw that one. But standing with my mom, and I don't know what program it was, but I was her floor director, and I've got the headphones on and everything else. But you can kind of see the hair.
Okay.
That point, that was the mullet.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's still in high school. That's early in my senior year. And the other thing is I got all my friends involved. That same best friend, Darren Culberson, he texted me on election night going, I remember those days on election night at your parents' place running camera. And then, my buddy Billy, and it just goes down the line because it was cool. We could go and do whatever we wanted. And my dad and mom were like, good, we don't have to do it. Y'all have fun. We thought it was cool, So.
Hey. Oh, I do have a little question, just more of a curiosity, like Wesley would say.
Right.
How did you, I guess you were very invested in seeing how technology has advanced throughout the media and all that stuff. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that experience was?
Oh, it's fascinating, and it was then, okay? Because, excuse me, every time something came out, I wanted to get it. But I was at, my dad's station was run on a shoestring budget, so we didn't always have it. They had good stuff.
Yeah.
And then the, WFGX in Fort Walton Beach had 15 people working there. It was anything they could do to even get equipment sometimes. So I was always trying to read up on it. In those days, you had to read the magazines. We didn't have the Google yet.
Yeah.
Right? Videotapes were this big.
Oh.
They were like 3/4 inch tape. No, that was the 2-hour tape. That was the 20-minute tape.
Oh.
Okay. And then I'll use videotape as an example.
Yeah.
Then there for master control, there was 1-inch and 2-inch tape and these big reels. Then I've graduated into beta, and that put all of the gear, instead of a recorder and a camera, they were together on your shoulder, and it was beta tapes about this big. Then there was beta SP. Then there was digibeta. Ooh, that was cool. Now I'm talking like late 90s.
Yeah.
Okay. Then in the early to mid 2000s, then file based, and there were these big cards about like this, and they'd hold 5 or 6 minutes, and we thought that was the coolest thing ever. And one of them goes, "One day we'll put a gig on this." 1 gig.
1 gig.
Right.
Wow.
Now we're putting terabytes on this. That's just and you know what's funny? My dad said to me when I went into television that he was sad because he got to see the glory days of television in the 60s and 70s. And he goes, "I'm glad you're in the business. I hope you do what you want to do. I know you'll make a good living, but you've missed it." And I said, "Well, Dad, I hope there's a new frontier. I hope there's a new advancement. I hope there's a glory days that's still coming." And I think this is where it's going. I think this is the new frontier, or part of it. I think the digital era, the streaming era, it's as a broadcaster, I'm not afraid of any of it. I love it. And I feel like, you know, to use an American stereotype, I feel like that we are in covered wagons heading west in the 1800s. We don't know what we're going to see when we get there. We're going to encounter all kinds of strange things on the way, but we're going to love it when we get there. And I think that frontier just keeps moving further so that we got to run faster. And by the way, embrace technology, because if you don't, it's going to leave you behind.
Yep.
You know?
You got to embrace it.
Yeah.
So you've lived, especially when I work at the station, I've seen, like, you were mentioning being behind camera. We don't use that anymore. So that to me was like, what? That's amazing.
There used to be 3 camera operators behind 3 cameras and a floor director, which was one of my favorite jobs in a studio.
Yeah.
Now we have 10 cameras, and it's all controlled in one place. And it's all key-framed out and does its own thing. Ugh.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's like, wow, how much technology has advanced, and it's actually very helpful now to actually help out produce a show. But we've talked a lot about you in the media, but do you have any other hobbies? I know you love hiking.
Oh, man, I love hiking. And I took that up late.
What do you mean?
I only took up hiking like last summer.
Really?
Never hiked a day in my life.
Why did you decide to go into that? How
First
did
of all,
that happen?
sometimes I ask myself the same question.
Okay, fair.
That childhood best friend.
Okay,
Darren Culberson, firefighter back home. And you understand when I say childhood best friend, you know, we came up through, we went adults, we didn't talk for a few years. We come back together and talk like we never stopped talking. We'd go back, you know. He was at my wedding. We didn't see each other again for several years. And as we got older in life, we're like, hey, man, we've known each other the longest. Let's, you know. And so about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we reconnected and stayed with it. And, you know, our wives are great people and great friends and all. And he is a firefighter at my age.
Oh, wow.
And he's a paramedic and a darn good one.
Wow.
Okay. And he is he's in amazing shape. They all are. I'm a desk jockey at 310 Broadway for KFES 12. But I lost a bunch of weight and got myself in shape. And he said, I've been really kind of waiting for that because I want you to go hiking with us. And so I bought all the gear and all the stuff, and the lovely Mrs. Conroy was so patient with that because it's like there's another package at the house. I'm like, ooh, the backpack came in, right?
Yeah.
And so
she's amazing, by the way. I'm sorry, I have to say it.
Let me tell you something. You are right. I definitely married up.
Yep.
Yeah, she's good people.
She is.
Great people.
Yep.
Yeah. So last summer they said, hey, meet us in North Carolina at Linville Gorge. I got all my shiny new gear, got my old stuff. And they broke me in half at least 3 times.
What do you mean?
Just, you know, I think they call me the fall guy. I fall on every hike at least twice. In fact, the last one I fell 3 times. Rolled an ankle, went down. Once you roll it, you're gonna roll it again and again.
Oh wow!
And it's like, you know, it's you know, several thousand feet of elevation straight down a gorge to the Linville River, up a gorge. It was 20 miles in 2.5 days.
Wow.
Going up and down. Eating, using freeze-dried food, building fires, sleeping in a tent. My idea of roughing it, Ari, was a black and white TV. Right?
Because you're in television.
But when you're done, the sense of accomplishment, and you want to talk about dopamine. When you see that parking lot after that, you're like, oh my gosh, we made it. And then they took me out to Wyoming.
Oh.
And we went to the Wind River Range. It's in the Bridger Teton National Forest. It's right next to the Tetons. And it's got, Gannett Peak. It's got Fremont Peak, which is almost 13.8 in elevation.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right now here in Cape Girardeau, we're at 400.
Wow.
Right. You start at 9,200 feet of elevation in the parking lot. It's already no air.
Yeah.
Right. And you go 14 miles pretty much uphill.
What's the tallest you have been?
I think I've been
highest?
around 13,000-ish. Wow. Yeah, Indian Pass, going toward Fremont Peak, which we went to summit it and didn't do it either time. It's okay. I got to get back and get that thing, But, there's no plants. There's no trees. There's rock and there's glacier lakes.
Ooh.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And the whole time, we got to the very highest point in Indian Basin, coming over Indian Pass, and I just set my chair up and stared and went, this Florida kid, this Cape Girardeau guy has never seen anything like this in my life. And that hooked me.
Wow.
And we went back to the same range, just Darren and me this year, because his firefighter buddies couldn't go. And of course, I'm giving them grief for that.
Obviously.
Yeah. So we're trying to decide between Alaska next year or maybe Sawtooth in Idaho.
Oh.
I want to go to Alaska. That's what I want to do.
Okay. Yeah. So throughout every year, the goal is to achieve a new hiking experience
right.
and new trails. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have like a goal of the highest you want to go at some point?
I think the bunch of us want to summit. We've summited smaller mountains like Table Rock in North Carolina. I'd keep talking about Indian Pass. Indian Pass is up there. It might as well be its own mountain kind of thing. But, picking one, and you got to have more time. You got to have more days. You can't go all the way from the base, the parking lot, the trailhead to the summit in a day. Yeah. Some people can. Well, this guy can't.
Okay.
Right?
Fair.
So we have to find more time in our lives, spread it out a little bit more, and we'll get that done. I don't know which peak yet, but we're going to.
Okay.
And these peaks, they're climbable without ropes, but it is straight up, and it's what we call a scramble. You're almost on your hands and knees doing, going up like that.
Wow.
Reaching around things and coming over the top. You don't want to go that way, right? So
okay.
Yeah. So, but I like it because I just it's my midlife crisis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have to ask, because I sometimes walking around downtown and I've seen you. I'm sorry, I gotta put it out there. So I was one time walking, and that's how I found out he loves hiking. I'm walking around downtown, and then I see Ari. I'm like, who knows my name out here? And then I look, and he's like looking at me with his backpack. We're like, oh,
and a baseball
Chris.
cap.
A baseball
and she's
cap.
like, who is this crazy old man talking to me?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, hi. Okay, so saying that story, I've always wondered, how do you train then? Because you train for hikes.
Right.
How do you do that then here in Cape Girardeau?
I'll spend the winter in the gym 3 to 4 nights a week. And I will walk 2 to 3 miles just around the track, no matter what I'm doing. Walk. That's what you're doing.
Okay.
And what I'll do is I'll walk a mile, and then I'll train abs. And then I'll walk a mile, and I'll train the ankles. And I'll walk a mile, I'll train the knees. Walk a mile, do the core. The back part of the core. Yeah. And then I vary that through, because you do opposing muscle groups. So, you don't do, tries and chest on the same day. You do buys and back in the same day kind of thing. So I vary it that way.
Okay.
I didn't do enough, I find, because my ankles I've broken both ankles before.
Oh,
Not at the same time, but in different times.
Yeah.
So there's more work that I've got to do there. So I'm getting with a trainer to figure that out, so I can be a little stronger and not roll that thing on the next hike.
Okay.
So yeah, but I start training, and got done in August. I took a month off because I needed to heal. Okay. And then I started in mid-September, and I've been at it. So
wow.
And that's guy my age probably needs to stay in shape.
Okay, I was curious. I'm like, how do you train here? Because I don't really know much trails. I think there is a couple of trails here, right?
Yeah, I always go to. I'll go over to Garden of the Gods in Illinois, and then I just go across the middle of Kappaha Park.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
and then there's always Heart Attack Hill on the campus here.
Yeah, Cardiac Hill.
Cardiac Hill, yeah, and that believe me, it gets its name for real.
To this date, I have not seen it yet. So
We'll
I'll
go.
see it.
Yeah.
I'll see it soon. I'm not making any promises. I will not go up it, but I want to see it. I've heard some stories.
Well, it makes my wife happy that I'm in shape and that I like something. It makes her unhappy that it could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of life insurance involved. So.
Okay, that's perfect. And Diane is so amazing. I love to share with her and talk to her a bit. She's so great. So amazing. And your dog Louie, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
we got to
Louie?
meet him. He's so cute.
We call him the old man. We used to call him Stupid Head because he would answer to that.
How did you find that out?
Because when he was young, he was just a dumb, dopey dog.
Okay.
And one of the kids go, "Hey, Stupid Head." He goes, but he actually is really smart and he's a great dog. And for an older guy, he's doing great. So.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of your kids, another curiosity, did they pursue media as well?
They have all three at one time or another pursued media.
Okay.
My oldest was a disc jockey on the he didn't like. I was a radio host.
Okay.
Back home in Fort Walton Beach, and did a little time in Cincinnati. Got out of the business, and he's much happier. Believe me.
Okay.
Spent some time in the military. The whole thing. Our daughter came out of Arkansas State University with, I cannot name the degrees. Advertising, management, whatever.
Yeah.
And she worked for the New Orleans Saints
Oh.
as a seller. And then COVID hit.
Oh.
And that really made it hard to sell football tickets.
Yeah.
And she worked for the Pelicans too.
Okay.
So she went to work, and it wasn't because of me. It's because of the connection she made at my old television station in Memphis.
Wow.
And the thing is she spent second and third and fourth grade going to work with me. So she walks into people's offices and go, "First time I met you, I was in third grade." She was at my old station.
Yeah.
And she killed it there. She did great. And she was a seller for a while, and then she was a digital sales specialist. And then she fell in love. And they live in Providence, Rhode Island. And so she works for the Next Star station. That's our competition, by the way, as a digital sales specialist for them. So she's in the business.
Okay.
My youngest, Jack, who is hilarious,
Okay.
always said, "I'm not going into the family business. I watched Joey do it. I watched Mary do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it." Guess what he does?
He's in the business.
He's a seller for East Arkansas Broadcasters, East Arkansas Media.
In the business.
It's digital and radio. And I know the folks who started that, a guy named Bobby Caldwell, and he is a Hall of Fame broadcaster and a good friend. And again, I didn't get him that job. They didn't ask me. He went and did that himself. So he's been there for a while, and he's doing well. And now all three kids can call me and talk shop.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So basically, you did what your parents kind of did with you, like taking your kids to work,
Yeah.
and they got to see people, know the system, and everything.
Yeah. This business, and I think it's going to stay that way as it evolves more into the digital realm than the broadcast realm, is very, very, what's a good word? It overtakes you. It immerses you. It takes over your life. When you're in it, your family's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, a lawyer, Ari, does not go home and practice law to relax.
That's true.
But a television person goes home and usually watches television to relax.
Yep.
And my whole family, Diana included, doesn't watch television like everybody else. It's always like, "Oh, did you see that edit? Oh, that was wrong. I can't believe they wrote it that way. That's poor writing. That's great writing. Wow, what a great commercial."
Yes.
And
I think we've talked about this
Yeah.
at some point. We were talking about how sometimes I would watch a series or movies specifically as well, and you're like, "I love how the writers wrote that script," or the lighting here is so great. I wonder how they set that up."
and the person eating popcorn next to you is like, "What?"
Yeah, he's like, "Just enjoy the scene." I'm like, "No, I need to think production wise as well."
It's funny when I watch a concert, my
Yeah.
wife is, and I watch it like this. because I'm like watching the drummer, listening, and I watch TV the same way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where I watch our newscast, and I've got Roger, our news director. I'm like,
all the comments.
yeah. But you have to consume the product. You have to know the product, and actually, you have to kind of immerse yourself in the product. In our case, to understand it and know it, and be able to say something constructive about it.
Yeah. Also,
You got to walk the walk.
Got to walk the walk. Yeah. Especially in my case, and I know a lot of new people in the media also receive feedback well, and to consume it, it also helps correct yourself and what you're doing and getting new ideas. Oh, wait, I think I should have done it that way. So,
right.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the thin-skinned.
Yeah.
It's my skin's so thick I could walk through a forest fire and have no idea about it. Okay, I mean and that's just after almost 38 years in the business. And yes, the young people who really excel in our business, whether it be on digital or broadcast or an influencer even.
Yeah.
The ones who really excel are the ones who understand that taking criticism is an important part.
Yeah.
I couldn't take criticism at that age. No way. Certainly can now. In fact, I'm like, ooh, thank you.
Yeah.
I like discovering things.
Yeah. And that's how one grows as a person and as a professional. So bridging off of that, two more things to wrap up the episode. Okay. Time has flown by.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I love talking to you. Listen to the stories. It's so amazing. But first question, what are some hardships you have gone through that has helped you develop that hard skin and change your mindset throughout time, especially being in the media industry and the position you have now?
Losing my dad when I was 23 years old, and he was 54. That was tough. That was really tough because my mom stayed in the business. My mom was his boss. My dad was basically the GM, and she was the on-air personality or news director, depending on what point in time. That really did. That hurt. I'll tell you. But it renewed my want for a legacy. Yeah. I'm going to follow in those footsteps. And my brother, too. And my brother was a news director for Nexstar, and he is now done with the business and happy. He went the distance. I'm proud of him. And I still look up to him. Great writer. My golly, can that man write? But that was a real turning point for me. Wow. And then the day my phone rang at WMC you said hardships. I was going to tell you a great thing.
You can talk about that too. No worries.
I was working at a station in Birmingham, and I resigned to pursue other opportunities. It just didn't work out. It was a personality thing. I think if I could put myself now back there, everybody would have understood better, including me. But it, instead of tearing me down, motivated me to take a next step up. And that's many, 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 many years ago. I mean, lots of years ago. And that's how I got to Raycom Media.
Okay.
So, and getting with Raycom Media, which owns KFES and owned WMC in Memphis, where I was at the time, and KAIT in Jonesboro, where I was the first-time GM. Gray acquired them, and it all worked out to just keep going up the line because Raycom Media looked at me and said, "Do you want to be a general manager one day?" I'm from the creative side. That almost never happens. And I go, yeah. And they go, well, we have 4 or 5 people who are from the creative side who are really good general managers.
Wow.
And from that fire came the forge. And it really toughened me up and made me go for it. And it has been a great ride since that point. The whole thing's been a great ride.
Wow.
So those two things, and it happens,
Yeah.
And I am thankful for every single trial I went through. And I would go through every one of them again if I knew that I was going to come out where I'm out. How's that? I tell young people that. I'm like, man, sit around and go, well, this sucks, and be thankful for it, because you will come out on the other side a lot better.
Wow, that's a great way to look at it, because sadly a lot of people don't look at it that way.
Right.
And they would crumble down and maybe do something else or have a different mindset for a while. They'll eventually get there, but that's a beautiful way to look at it.
Right.
And more on that, what is some advice you can give, or more advice you can give young people or anyone in general about life, hardships, or anything you want to share?
I remember I was at family Thanksgiving one time, and I'd gone to this is a dumb story, but this is a great story.
Okay.
I went to take a nap, and I woke up. I'm a nap taker. Oh my gosh, if I get 20 minutes in, I'm a happy guy. And I woke up and I go, what am I going to do in my life? I got to change my major and go to a university that has a good, journalism or communications program. I'm going nowhere, man. I had a TV job and it was paying the bills. And I was in school at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I already had it going on. I just was getting the cart before the horse and going ahead. And what I realized was going on at that time, Ari, is this is my passion. And it was just my soul going, this is what you should be doing. And you need to take a couple more steps and you need to figure it out. But I thought I was nowhere and going nowhere. And I was probably 20 years old, 21 maybe. No 21-year-old knows where they're going. And you got to be patient with yourself. If I could appear in front of my old 21 self, I'm like, hey, I remember feeling this, but you know what? You're ahead of yourself right now. Just go on the path you're on, work hard, do the right things, and the right things will happen. I was just so anxious. I wanted it all right now. And a lot of young people, they want what their parents have or what somebody who's been at a media outlet for 25 years has. And the thing is you have what you have. And I think that people get ahead of themselves and want too much, too fast, too early. I want it now, now, now. I wanted it now, now, now. And I can now say, I'm happy where I'm at. Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Wow, all of it, I really loved it. I learned a lot myself. So thank you so much for sharing all of this and that. All of the advices you gave, I think you gave a lot of them throughout the whole episode. So I'm very grateful for you and everything you have done. And to learn from you, it's been a pleasure, really.
I'm grateful for you. You've become a good friend. And when you asked me to do this, I was totally excited.
I was excited too. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a good episode.
Oh, I don't know about all that, but there you go.
It was at least for me, I had a lot of fun. It was really good. So without further ado, thank you guys. See you in the next one. If you joined us today, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs some little inspiration. We'll be back next week for another incredible story. Until then, keep listening, keep learning, keep embracing the stories that are all around us. Thanks for tuning in to My Story Podcast.